wasted on me, wasted on me, wasted on me. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It's Friday afternoon, and we're so happy to have you guys here. What a week we had, huh? It started off with a powerful Monday. Hassan did a phenomenal job setting the tone for a fantastic week. I hope you had the opportunity to go out and make an impact and vote on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we had a discussion over resiliency and mental health. Yesterday, we focused on systemic racism, emotional intelligence, and on your personal board, on your personal brand. And here we are today. I really hope you had time to soak all the information and all the knowledge shared over this week and is ready to close off the right way. I'm really proud of the team and everything that they put together for you and for me and for all of us and for our community. I'm blessed with the opportunity to introduce our final and next guest, Dr. Nicholas Pierce. He's a scholar, entrepreneur, and pastor. Dr. Nicholas is an award-winning clinical professor of management and organizations at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, the founder and CEO of the Vocati Group, a boutique global management consultancy, and assistant pastor of Chicago's historic Apostolic Church of God. He is also the author of the best-selling book, The Purpose Path, a guide to pursuing your authentic life's work. So without further ado, Dr. Nicholas, I hand it off to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Igor. And a warm good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of you, depending on where you are joining us from around the world today. It is a joy to be in community with you all as we tackle the concept of uprooting systems of inequity and injustice at the close of this conference. And I would be remiss if I did not note that here in the United States, I've got Georgia on my mind and want to eat a peach right about now because we are grateful for the work that's happening there and in Pennsylvania and in Arizona and in truly in every state around the country because the reality is that democracy does require all of us. And the truth is that every vote has to count in order for any vote to count. So we are truly thrilled to be together in this space at this time talking about this topic, the idea of being on the purpose path. Because if you think about it, as much emphasis as has been placed even on voting over the last several decades, which is a right that not everyone had or even currently has an equal opportunity to exercise. The reality is that no matter which way the election turns out, no matter which side of the red-blue divide you might find yourself on, the reality is the person in the White House is not going to solve the problems of this country alone. If that were the case, I imagine that between 2008 and 2016, most of these problems would have been solved already. So the reality is that no matter who we send to the White House or whether your candidate does not get sent, the work of uprooting systemic inequities and uprooting systemic injustice is a shared work. It's a work that we each have to find our place in, along what I like to call the purpose path. This idea that our sense of purpose in life is not as much about a destination or an end point as it is about engaging a journey of exploration and a journey of being faithful to what it is we have on our hearts to do. So before I get into talking any further, I want to ask Jessica if she wouldn't mind putting this poll out for us. I'd love to get a sense of how you all are feeling around the virtual auditorium today. I want to know, is your daily work aligned with your life's work? Is your daily work, what you're doing every day, aligned with what you feel called to do with your life, go ahead and vote. Could be anywhere from absolutely with an exclamation point to absolutely not yet, and anywhere in between. Go ahead and lock in those votes. Every vote does count. Give you all about 15 more seconds. All right, let's go ahead and release the outcomes. Here we see that there's a significant percentage of you all who are saying, absolutely, my daily work is aligned with my life's work. Some of you all are saying to a certain extent. And then there are a couple of you all who are saying perhaps not. And that is honest and it's authentic. And what I want to do is talk about this idea of understanding our life's work through the perspective of what it means to uproot systemic inequities. Thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing that poll with us. What I want to do is raise a set of questions that can guide ongoing reflection for us as we engage this journey, because at the end of the day, what we do with our days in aggregate is what we will have done with our lives. Like at the end of the day, you don't get to say, well, here's what I did every day, here's the job I had, or here's what I happen to do spending my time, but then here's the impact I wanted to create with my life. The math just does not work that way. What we do each day adds up to a life. And so there are a few questions I want to pose to us that hopefully will be able to spark some ongoing reflection and ultimately position us to be able to align our daily work with our life's work as we endeavor to uproot systemic inequities. The first question that I have to ask us is the question, who am I? And this question of who am I is a question that is summoning us to understand not which inequities we want to uproot, but how rooted are we? Who are we as we go along this work? This is a question, you all, not to ask you to share your name or your demographics, your social identities. You're a mother, you're a father, you're a sister, you're a brother, you're black, you're brown, you're white, you're tall, you're short, you're gay, this is not what this is talking about. Although those social identities do matter, the question is, who am I at the end of the day? Like at core, amid all of the intersections of those various identities I just mentioned. This is not just asking you to identify yourself as others identify you. This is asking you to identify who you are according to how you see yourself. This is so important, you all, because so many of us go through our days inauthentically. We go through our days wearing a mask. You all know the mask. You all are probably quite familiar with the mask. It's the mask you put on when you get to work, even in the Zoom space, when you're doing virtual meetings, swinging through the Zoom jungle. The reality is that oftentimes you feel pressure to hide the real you. You feel pressure, mom, to hide the fact that you have kids 6 feet away from you trying to do school on a laptop computer. You hide the fact that your Zoom background is going to be different every day because you're functionally homeless. You hide behind the fact that even though you have a Zoom background, there's actually in your real background a picture of you and your partner, and because you're afraid of how you'll be received by your colleagues, you don't want them to see that picture of your partner or see the picture of your home space, so you put up the front. All I'm saying is not that we need to throw shade at people who are using virtual backgrounds in this day and time. I am here for all of the beautiful backgrounds that so many of us are able to throw up on a daily basis and even rotate from meeting to meeting. All I'm saying is, are you doing it out of a feeling of inauthenticity? Are you trying to flex who you are to impress people who don't even care about you? Are you rooted in a sense of selfhood that you are enough and you don't need to earn the applause and approval of people who don't really matter that much. This first piece is a call, you all, to authenticity. It's a call to radical authenticity, not the kind of I'm going to show up in my office with my bathrobe and slippers on authenticity, not the I'm going to cuss you out because I'm just being me authenticity. I'm not saying be unprofessionally authentic. I'm saying within the bounds of what you know you need to handle to keep your role and to keep things moving, showing up in your full genius, not hiding your superpowers, not darkening or shading your light to try to help someone else feel better about themselves. It's calling out the systemic inequities that exist with clear understanding of the moments in which we ourselves may have benefited from some of the very inequities that we are now trying to uproot. And being real clear that as we go through the work of uprooting systemic inequities, that we ourselves might feel a little turbulence. That's the authenticity that I want us to think about, because this work is not for everyone, and everybody's part doesn't have to sound the same. The orchestra here is big. It's huge. And so we don't all have to be first violin on this. We don't all have to be doing the exact same work the exact same way, whether you're in the Y system, whether you are adjacent to the Y system, or whatever role you play in the broader ecosystem here. We don't all have to do the same job the same way to get the same results. My question is, whatever part you're playing, are you being you? Or do you find yourself apologizing for the you-ness of you that is actually the unique brilliance and genius and superpower that makes you distinctive in this moment in time, right? So that's question number one, the question of who am I? It's a question of identity, not what your mama and your daddy said you were, because I know some of us have come from situations where we've been told you were an accident, you were not planned for, you're worthless. This is not about what other people say about you. This is about what's within you about you. So that's one question. We got to be clear about who we are. The second question I want to raise for us today is the question of what is success. The question of what is success is so important. In the work of uprooting systemic inequities, the question is, does equity suggest a finish line? I mean, let's think about this. So much of the conversation, you all, has focused on diversity and inclusion. Diversity being this notion of the range of human differences being represented in various spaces, and inclusion being about those various voices being heard. We've heard about diversity and inclusion. But a lot of us have pushed toward equity because we're saying inclusion is not enough. Inclusion is about, I am happy to invite you to my table and let you have a voice as long as it stays my table. And this whole idea of equity is saying, well, let's level the playing field so that the power distribution is more level. But I want to ask you all this. Is equity far enough? Should we not be thinking perhaps about justice? The systemic inequities that we're trying to uproot is not just advancing the work of equity. It's advancing the work of justice. Justice is the structural uprooting of systems that don't work. And I must hasten to add that the reality is a lot of these systems that we say are broken actually aren't really broken per se. They're actually working exactly as they were designed to work. They're actually doing exactly what they were designed to do. They're not broken, they're just flawed from the root, which is why the uprooting work is so important. That's the work of justice. And so you have to be really clear about how you're defining success, not just in the work, because I think it's easier for us to justify and describe and envision success as it pertains to the work. But let me bring it back home. What is success for you? What is success for you? So many of us find ourselves feverishly climbing ladders to be successful, But the question is, what happens when you have been successful in climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall? What do you do when you've been chasing after your neighbor's definition of success, or your parents' definition of success, or the media's definition of success, or your employer's definition of success, and one day you look at yourself in the mirror and you recognize that on the scorecard of your soul, you have done nothing. You have not attended to the work that is yours to do. You have not done the work that's been assigned to your life. And so the question is, how do you get there? You have to first figure out what success is. I'm all in favor of building intergenerational wealth. I'm all in favor of it. But be clear on your why before you aim for what. Right? Let's be mindful that so many of us are following after and chasing after definitions of success that have been handed to us without interrogating whether this is success to me, whether this is success for me, whether this is success in light of my unique life's work. And so I want to encourage us today as we think about what to do after this conference, because we have heard so many powerful messages. It's been a soothing balm for our souls, but it's also been a stirring of what action should I take next. And I imagine if you're like me after a conference like this, you're probably leaving with like a long list of things you could do that would be good to do, but you have to ask, what is yours to do? This, my friends, is a call to clarity. Before you go all scatterbrained trying to fix all the inequities and uproot all the trees, figure out which one is yours to tackle today. Because the work before us is great. And these problems did not evolve or emerge in a day. We need one another. This is not a time for justice superheroes. This is a time for all of us to put our hand to the plow and do our part in our space with the privilege and resources and access that we have. So you have to be clear on what's yours to do, which ties in with the third question I want to leave with us today. We first asked the question, who am I? Secondly was the question, what is success? The third question is, why am I here? Why are you alive on the planet today? Has it occurred to you that we are in the middle of a global pandemic that has cost millions of people losses of all sorts? Hundreds of thousands, millions have lost their lives. So many people have lost their livelihoods. Even perhaps some of you all who are joining us today find yourself in a situation where you have lost a source of income. You've lost connectedness with a family member. Perhaps you're in a co-parenting situation and how you share custody of your child is a little less straightforward. Perhaps you are in a situation where your dreams have been robbed from you because 2020 was going to be your year and then the pandemic hit. There's been a lot of loss, but you have survived it. You have survived the injustice. You have survived the indignities. You have survived the arguments over whether Black lives really matter or whether all lives matter or whether the blue lives matter more. You survived it. Some of you have survived budget cuts. You have survived foreclosures. You have survived grief of all kinds. Not being able to bury a loved one in the way that you would have wanted to celebrate their life. Perhaps having a loved one to pass away in a hospital bed while you were only able to watch on FaceTime because you weren't allowed inside. I mean, this has been a tough year, but you've survived it. And I don't think that you've survived it just to make money. I don't think you've survived it just to have social media followers. I don't think you've just survived it so you can get your woke credentials stamped at the end. I think there's more to your life than this. And so I want you to think about why you're still here. Why have you survived what took other people out? And if you think it's all by happenstance, I would encourage you to think again. Nothing just happens. This idea of why you're here has to connect not just to your own self-enhancement, it's connecting to human flourishing. What is your contribution to human flourishing in the world? We asked the poll at the very beginning, is your daily work being expressed, is your life's work being expressed through your daily work? We asked that question, and so many of you said yes. My question is your sense of why you're alive on the planet today being expressed through what you do every day? Perhaps it is, but maybe it's not. This is not a call for everyone to go rush out and change jobs. That is not what I'm saying at all. Let me be super clear. I'm not saying that everyone needs to go and quit their job. What I am saying is that if you know that there's a degree of misalignment between what you say you're called to do and what you're doing, find a path forward. Perhaps that path is to take a class, to seek mentorship, to get a stretch opportunity in the workplace, to take up something on the side. I don't know what it is. All I'm asking you to do is come off of autopilot, because you don't know how many days you've got left. No one knows how many years they have left in their life, but let it be said of all of us that there is some life left in our years, and we made the most of every day. This question of why I'm here requires clarity, just as does the question, what is success? Here's the next question I want to put on your mind. We talked about identity and authenticity, this question of who am I? We talked about what is success, making sure you're climbing the right ladder that's leaning against the right wall. We've talked about this notion of why am I here, and understanding that you are alive on purpose. You have a vocation, not just a job, a vocation. The word vocation comes from the Latin meaning calling. A career, interestingly, comes from a French word that means racetrack. And so for those of us who are so focused on career management, you might find yourself on this racetrack going round and round and round and round in circles, feeling aimless. But a calling, vocation, can include career, but it's higher than that. And I want to submit to each and every one of you today that no matter what you've been through, you have a calling. That's why you survive. So here's the next question I want to raise for us. This is the question of, am I running the right race? Am I running the right race? This is interesting, you all, because some of us are going to have to make some pivots after this conversation. Yes, we're woke. Yes, we're all about justice. Yes, we're about uprooting the systemic inequities, but you recognize that perhaps the seat you're sitting in is not the seat that was meant for you. Or perhaps you're in the right seat, but you're not saying and doing the right things. Perhaps you're like Esther from the Jewish scriptures, who found herself in a position of influence because she could not ignore the pain of her people outside the palace. And it occurred to her that perhaps she had come into that position and sphere of influence, into the kingdom, for such a time as this. When you recognize that you've come in for such a time as this, now what you need with the clarity you've got is courage. Clarity to know what's yours to do, and then courage to do what's yours to do. Courage. This is an idea, you all, that I write about in my book, The Purpose Path. I call it vocational courage. If vocation is understanding my calling, and I believe we all have a call to love one another and to seek to do right by one another, and to also seek to create systems that ensure justice for one another. The question is, am I going to actually commit myself to doing what it takes to connect my soul with my role? I love what Parker Palmer says about this. Parker Palmer is an amazing man. He's a writer. He's a philosopher, a great thinker. And what Parker says about this idea of vocation is that vocation is not a goal to be achieved. It's a gift to be received. In other words, you all, as compelling as this conversation may be, resist the temptation to put on your to-do list for the weekend, figure out my vocation. Because what you're likely to do is put pressure on yourself that you weren't meant to carry. Right? This is not about going out and checking purpose off your to-do list. This is about having courage to live every day with purpose and on purpose. And can I just be super honest with you all? Super honest? The reality here is that when it comes to courage, it sometimes involves a little fear. It sometimes involves some scary stuff. Sometimes it involves some reprogramming of scripts in our minds that have told us that we are not worthy, not able, not capable. Sometimes it involves us embracing a little bit of pain and discomfort and inconvenience, which is why I did not want to write a book that was talking about the 5 steps to being happy tomorrow. Because happiness, though it has a place, will oftentimes cause us to try to circumnavigate adversity, and we'll miss out on the very vocation that we were created to fulfill. Sometimes purpose is revealed through pain. And so if we structure our entire lives around the avoidance of pain, we might just be structuring our lives around the avoidance of purpose. So there's a courage piece that comes into this. You might say, well, I'm 60 years old and I've got a mortgage and I've got a kid in college. And what exactly are you asking me to do, Dr. Pierce? Take one step at a time. I'm 25 years old and I just signed on the dotted line with the YMCA. And I mean, I love the organization and it's a pandemic, man. Like, what do you want me to do? I want you to take one step at a time. I want you to be honest with yourself about what you can't not do. I know that double negative in English doesn't work very well. So, well, why don't you just say what you should do? No, I don't want you to just think about what you should do or could do or would do. I want to think about what you can't not do. What impact you feel called to create, that if your hands are tied behind your back and you're not able to do it, you will feel like your life was less fruitful than it was intended to be. So here's where this all comes together in this notion of uprooting systemic inequities. No one is asking you to go out and completely dismantle society as we know it. That's not the request. The request is, in the near term, one step at a time with the areas that you have within your reach to influence. And then as you do so, you look up and you look around you and you recognize that you've got a squad, you've got peeps, you got people, you got backup. And as the scripture says, one can chase 1,000, but 2 can put 10,000 to flight. I recognize that this is a unique conversation to have in the YMCA organization, particularly because Christianity and uprooting systemic inequities have a complicated history in the United States and really around the world. Because in many parts of the world, systemic inequity has been introduced in the name of Christianity, if we're honest. Some have said that Christianity justifies slavery, that Christianity justifies white supremacy, that Christianity is organized around a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. And so the reality here is that as you advance this work, we can't get around the C in the YMCA. It's not just swimming pools and after-school programs and amazing social impact in cities all over. You all have to reckon with where the YMCA has been complicit in planting the very inequities that you all desire to uproot. This is big work. No one's saying it's going to be done overnight. but it's work that you can't afford to put off any longer. And that's my last question. What should you do next? What should you do now? And my only request would be that from this day forward, you would lead with purpose and that you'd lead on purpose. So with that, let's open up the Q&A box. And I know on Zoom it's Q&A. I prefer for it to be Q&P, not questions and answers, but questions and perspectives. So if you have any perspectives you would like for me to share, questions that may occur to you, by all means, please feel free to go ahead and throw your thoughts in the question box. Now, I'll also turn to Igor and the team, who I want to thank again for inviting me to share with you all to facilitate this time of conversation. Yeah, great question here. I think your name is Bronwyn. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question for all of us to be able to hear?
Apologies, Bronwyn. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. My question is related to the path of the divide that we are in our country. It's so deep, and I just wonder, with that chasm, how do we bridge it? Do we bridge it? And is it something that can be a pathway? And if so, how do we start that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Everybody's talking about healing and bridging and reconciliation, and I think those are very, very important. We have to, as Dr. King said, if we don't learn to live together as brothers and sisters, we will perish together as fools. So I think there has to be a set of voices that can not just finger point and boo and cancel one another, but ultimately build bridges of mutuality that we can cross. Now, here's the challenge with this, though, Bronwyn, is that a lot of people want reconciliation without reckoning with the truth. And so I think that reconciliation without truth is not reconciliation at all. It is just get over it and turn the page. And while forgiveness is an act of one, right, meaning that you can choose to forgive someone who has oppressed you, who has harmed you, who has wronged you in any way, that is a unilateral choice. But reconciliation, the reestablishment of relationship, that's a two-person activity. That's a bilateral conversation. You can forgive someone and never talk to them again. You can forgive someone and they never even admit the wrong they've done to you. But reconciliation doesn't work like that. If there's going to be reconciliation and bridging of the deep divides in this country, oh, and by the way, even within the church, since I just implicated Christianity in this, we can't just gloss over this. I know that this is a multi-faith space, but even as we answer this question, it is apparent to me that we can't escape it. As we try to bridge these divides, we have to first start with truth. We have to move to repentance, which is not just a theological phrase. It is changing your mind about the wrong that you have either created or have benefited from, changing your mind about it, changing your mind about the people who you've oppressed, and then engaging in the bridging work where we can engage in mutual relationship and envision a more just, a more equitable, a more inclusive society for all. Thank you for that question. Awesome. Sydney, I see you've got a question. Sydney, talk to us. What's on your mind?
Hi. I wanted to ask for more clarity and advice on how we can begin to connect our soul with our role.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Sydney. This whole notion of connecting soul with role is a big one because a lot of us have to mute ourselves just to get through the workday. And by mute yourself, I don't mean like Zoom mute. I mean, we have to ignore the friction that's happening in our own spirit just to survive in the workplace. We have to compromise our integrity. We have to compromise our values. We have to act like we stand for things that we don't really stand for, just to get through the workday. And that is leaving your soul in the parking lot, acting as though you can leave that part of you outside and just come in and do the work. But here's the interesting thing that I'm seeing in this working from home era, and I really don't know, Sydney, if this is more working from home or living at work, right? I'm not sure which one it really is, because the separation is not there anymore. But because there is no more separation, now we are demanding of ourselves the ability to live a more integrated life, not seeking work-life balance as though work is over here and life is over here, but now we can't help but see that work and life are here. And so the idea is to live, as Parker Palmer would say, to live an undivided life, where you're not toggling back and forth, where you look at the work you're able to do every day as part of your life, not just something you do to be able to have the resources to live your life, right? And so part of that is having clarity around what's yours to do and why you're here. Some of this has to do with your sense of purpose in the world. And then the other part of it is about the courage to then start making the pivots that you need to make to connect the two. A lot of us, you all, are complicit in our own diminishment. And by that, I mean, we are complicit in the undermining of our own unique genius and brilliance by acting like we are made for work that we were never even made for. So I hope that was helpful, Sydney. Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see.
Others?
Yeah, it looks like we have one more. Go ahead, Nu. I think you're able to unmute now. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, since you touch on the C of the YMCA, how do you suggest some of the ways that we can work through that in a multi-faith world?
Great question. So I think that Christianity has largely focused itself on how to isolate itself from others in a very judgmental way. And I would argue that the fundamental foundation of Christianity, in my view, is love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Right? I mean, those are the words of Jesus when he was asked, what should we be focusing on out here? He said, this is what you need to focus on. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. If you do that, you'll get the rest. And I'm not intimately familiar with the inner workings of how the YMCA has evolved in its understanding of its Christian identity. So I want to be duly honoring of the fact that there are blind spots I have in terms of how that narrative is being lived out. However, what I would say is that in any organization, there has to be space for diversity of perspective as long as it is in service of the organization's mission. If there is values alignment in terms of why we're here, purpose alignment in terms of this is what the organization is trying to achieve, this is why the organization exists, and here's why I think I exist, and we can put these two together, and you've got the skills and the will to put your time and talent to work in service of that purpose and mission, I would hope that it's not an exclusionary space to the extent that it does not fashion itself as an explicitly religious organization, right? If the YMCA thinks of itself as a religious organization, that's a slightly different scenario than an organization that perhaps has religious foundations. So for example, like I teach at Northwestern University. Northwestern University was founded by Methodists, yet it is very much a secular university now. There are some vestiges of the fact that it was founded by Methodists remaining. So for example, if you look at the seal of Northwestern University, there's a Latin phrase in the crest that says whatsoever things are true. This whole idea of whatsoever things are true actually comes out of the Christian scriptures. However, in our practice as a university, it is not a Christian school. We are not existing to advance Christian principles or train clergy, for example, as our primary mission. So without having had the benefit of time and engagement with senior leaders at the Y to understand how you all are conceiving of this now, it's hard for me to provide feedback into a bit of a blind spot for me.
Thank you.
I hope that was helpful, though. Sure.
Thank you, Neil. And then we have one final question for you, Dr. Nicholas. Michelle, you should be able to unmute and come on back.
Yeah, so I restarted and my question is gone, so hopefully I can remember what I said in the moment. So I know we're supposed to speak positively, right? Right. But there are times, because I'm getting older and seeing more, that I lose hope that we can reach the reconciliation that you talked about, Dr. Pierce. And my question is, how are we assured that our voice and our hope drowns out the noise of all the things that are tearing us apart more than bringing us together? How could you?
Wow. Thank you for that question, Michelle, and the honesty of it. This is a great question for us to close on, because I think the Proverbs say that hope deferred makes the heart sick. And when you've been hoping for something for such a long time and you feel like it is ever eluding your grasp, there is the temptation to lose hope. There's a temptation to throw in the towel and to question what's it all for, to question whether you're living and you're giving and you're serving and you're advocating were in vain. And part of this, honestly, Michelle, is that we're trying to set up a world that some of us may not actually be able to live in, but it'll be our children's children's children who are able to benefit from the fruit of our labor. I'm reminded of Dr. King again, who said that he's been to the mountaintop and he's seen the promised land. And if the promised land he saw was 2020, boy, that's a nightmare. I don't think that our work on earth is always planting seeds that we ourselves will have to benefit from in our lifetime. And you never know the value of what you're doing 3, 4, 5 generations down the road. Some of us are in a position where we have been blessed to be able to see the fruit of our labor while we can still see it and appreciate it. But there are some moments, you all, in our lives where we're going to be planting seeds that may not bring forth a harvest until after we've closed our eyes for the final time. Which is why this whole notion of purpose, not just goal setting and metric establishing, but purpose is critical. Because our purpose has to outlive us and outlast us. And if our impact dies with us, I'm not sure that was really success. Some would say that success is in succession. And so part of this, Michelle, is to hold on to your hope and do what is yours to do, trusting that at the end of the day, no matter who's in the White House, no matter who's in the State House, no matter who's in City Hall, no matter who's in the CEO's chair, who's in the C-suites of our various organizations, that 500 years from today, there will still be a governor of all the nations who's running everything, who's got everything in control, and we're just playing our part in our generation to advance the work. But the work is of eternal significance. And so we have to work as though it depends on us, but then rest in the fact that at the end of the day, it's way, way bigger than us. I hope that was helpful. Thank you. So with that, I want to thank you all again for inviting me into this sacred space of this conference. I want to thank the organizers for pulling off in the middle of a pandemic what has been an amazing network opportunity, and I'll turn the floor back over to them. Thank you all very much.
Dr. Pierce, what a inspiring, honest, amazing workshop and word. Thank you so much for this. I cannot thank you enough in the name of the DIG team, on the multicultural development team, on the subcommittee team, on the attendees name. Thank you so much. That was amazing. It was a perfect end to an amazing week. With that, I turn to Jessica and Shauna.
Great. Thank you, Igor. And thank you, Dr. Pierce. Awesome. And we need Jawanza up here too. Come on up, Jawanza.
Wow, that was amazing. That was amazing. And what a great way to close out this absolutely profound and vibrant week. We hope that your cups are just as filled and overflowing as ours. And we just wanted to take a few moments to just share some of our favorite highlights and memories of the week, right? Jess, Jawanza?
Yes. I'm enjoying looking at all these cute faces because it feels like I'm in the room with them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's see, let's just go through it. And we asked the planning committee to share with us some of their favorite moments that we could lift up for each of you here today as well. But so on Monday, if you all remember, we kicked it off with an amazing keynote presentation by Hassan Minhaj, who was moderated by our very own Emily Morisawa. And we heard some fabulous quotes and takeaways from that experience. Did you have some that in mind, Jess or Jawanza, the committee lifted up?
Yeah, I heard representation means possibility. I loved that, especially in thinking through knowing API representation, even within the Y movement, is the lowest out of all people of color. I loved that we kicked off hearing from Hassan and him being able to really speak to that, and us being able to really bring that in to our organization as well.
Jawanza?
Oh,
I can't hear him.
There we go. Sorry, some fun Zoom technical issues. So we also highlighted during that same presentation, the idea that progress is not linear and that it takes time, and that's a huge component to a lot of the work that we're doing. And that we have to have that at the forefront of our mind, as well as the idea of wearing the home jersey wearing the home jersey when we're representing the US, but still being perceived as the away team. And that notion that a lot of folks experience when they're in their communities, and having that really be a thought that rang true to a lot of our committee members as well.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say my biggest takeaway from that opening general session was the notion of allowing your life to inspire your art, but not expecting the art to inspire your life. So if you're waiting for something, don't wait any longer. Just live your life and allow things to unfold as they are meant to. So we hope that you all had some great takeaways for yourself from that morning session on Monday. We then rolled into the later that morning session with our South African leaders, and we had some great takeaways from that session as well. We really spoke about truth and reconciliation during that session. It was a powerful time together. You think so too, Jess, Joanza?
Yeah, and I think just in thinking about the reality of life post-apartheid in South Africa, comparing it to our present day, I think there were so many powerful learnings that we can have from our global partners. I think one of my favorites that the committee submitted was the idea that there's no reconciliation without forgiveness, and there's no forgiveness without justice, and what that could actually look like. And I think we've started a conversation about starting to wrestle of what reconciliation could actually look like in the US, and learning from our global partners on what's worked and what hasn't. There's just some legendary leaders within that that I think we need to continue to glean learnings from.
Yeah, and it really speaks to opportunities for us to think about our relationships and partnerships with other YMCAs internationally, really learning from them and thinking about what opportunities can we take to bring back home within the States, especially now.
Absolutely. So then we rolled right into an amazing Achievers panel made up of some fabulous youth from all across the country who shared their thoughts and perspectives with us and encouragements on what they'd like to see happening through us as leaders in this organization and amongst our communities. And so we heard some powerful concepts around schools really being a microcosm of society, and what does that look like in those experiences for our children, and how can we as Y leaders, or even just leaders in our own lives, how can we really leverage those and lean into those spaces to make them more equitable and create that space of belonging for all? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in particular, I loved that panel was challenging us. There was some real true honesty from those leaders of times where they haven't necessarily felt welcome or that their voices were heard within the Y. And so I heard challenges from young people really pushing us to think of how we're creating spaces so that young people feel welcome in all parts of the Y, not just in youth programming. And so that's the challenge I took. I heard our change makers giving us the challenge to really elevate their voices in more spaces than just in the typical youth programming.
Yeah, and it called for them to have us create spaces for them to be their true, authentic selves. So we oftentimes talk about that with our staff or with other members, but when we think about young people, we don't always consider the intersectionality of their identity, of who they are, and really be able to allow them to show up in this space as their truly, truly authentic self.
Absolutely. This is fabulous. And I hope that you all are enjoying this walk down memory lane with us, because it's making me really sad that this week is coming to an end. So we have just a few more memories to push through with you all. And we hope you're also enjoying the visual memories on the screen before you. If you had the opportunity to partake in our virtual photo booth, we hope that these are bringing you just as many smiles as they have been bringing for us all week. We had an opportunity to dive into some workshops throughout that afternoon, and then we also ended an amazing closing session led by Donna B., who spoke to us about uprooting systemic inequities and some 7 strategies to really allow us to be successful in that effort. And it was a powerful way to end that Monday, and what an ending to a great day, right? You guys thinking?
Yeah, and I think it launched us into an evening and few days that were high anxiety, if I'm going to be completely honest. And it was so good to be together and really hear those inspirational words of what we can do to actually uproot systemic inequities, which to me provided the inspiration needed to make it through an anxiety-filled week. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a strong way to end our first day and really set the tone for the rest of our week to really ensure that we are able to have those motivational thoughts and have that sort of all-encompassing conclusion of a day like Monday before we stepped into Tuesday. And then that allowed us to really have the space on Wednesday to think critically and reflect and be able to appreciate the speakers and workshops that we had on Wednesday.
Yeah. And Tuesday, you all went out and voted, and we might still be counting, but your vote counted, and it was highly important. And we had some amazing local Y volunteers that led us through some virtual watch parties. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure that I would have capacity, but actually being on that group chat that's still messaging each other, and I kind of love that community that's been created within that, has been a source of joy and inspiration and a way to connect with people that I've never even met before. I felt like I was at an in-person DIG or Emily conference where I was getting to meet people and connect with one another, share my Snoop Dogg wine, all kinds of ridiculous things. So I want to thank you all for coming around each other and providing support and love to one another through a stressful experience in our society.
Absolutely. And Wednesday, if you remember, was all about self-care and mental health and resiliency. And so we dove into some fabulous sessions that morning, really speaking to resilience. We heard from Taryn Stayskull, who really spoke to us about social comparison is the enemy of joy, and really understanding what does resilience really look like for us, recognizing it looks different for everyone. And it was absolutely one of my favorite sessions of the week. And I hope that if you didn't get a chance to hear hers or any of the other ones that we offered up throughout the week, we will be able to share the recordings with you at another time. But those sessions on Wednesday were amazing.
I agree.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I agree. I loved kicking off with the meditation space. Again, as I was sharing in the Protecting Your Peace meditation, something that's new to me, but I'm trying to be more centered and try some new activities. So I just appreciate everyone coming together and really learning how to center ourselves.
Yeah, having that be the start of her day, then exploring resilience, and then allowing time for the workshops that we had on Wednesday were a nice shift away from what we would traditionally do in conferences, to really be able to dive into different topics around not just surviving, but thriving, the idea of moving from self-care to community care, and exploring stress management were huge, on top of our opportunity to have a critical conversation about climate justice. And so it really set the tone for an opportunity to shift how we normally have experiences like these, to really have it be more centered on you all, and to determine ways for us to shape an opportunity that allows you to get through a very heavy day like we had on Wednesday. So it was a great shift, and from what we heard from all of you, the workshops really helped to continue along your own self-care journey.
Absolutely. And then we closed the day out with a brave space where many of our individuals throughout the conference of the week were invited to join and just lean into how you're feeling and express with transparency and vulnerability your feelings. And it was a powerful session and an opportunity for people to really just share their truth and lean on each other. And so I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and Michael Ferris and anyone else who was there to support those conversations. Just thank you for showing up and leaning into those conversations, because it was so needed. And we need to offer up brave spaces as often as we can. Very rarely do we have the opportunity to talk about the pains and the experiences that we're navigating on a daily basis at work. So what a great opportunity, and just thank you all for showing up and being brave. We also had the opportunity to close out that Wednesday with a fabulous session on mental health, provided and led by Louisa Aquino. So I hope if you had the opportunity to attend that one, you found great value in that session as well. We often need to have more conversations around mental health, and it was a really amazing session.
Yeah, and Thursday we kicked off by digging deep. We wanted to get these roots and where they started to figure out how we can uproot them. So Thursday morning, we kicked off with our YMCA archivist, Ryan Bean, and he took us into a deep dive of history of racism in the Y. He challenged us to reconsider what it means to say for all. He said it doesn't mean that you actually serve all just because you say you're for all. And he gave some examples of how that's been true in our history. And we started our reconciliation journey. Part of our reconciliation journey is being able to come clean and be honest about our history and the fact that the Y has been a part of US history, and which means that when racism is reflected in our society, that it's also reflected within our organization. And we had a upfront and personal journey of seeing how that just truly looked like.
And continuing that conversation into our African American CEO town hall, where we were able to hear from and speak with Tommy Smith, was hugely important. It was an illustration of the journey of justice and how it has evolved and changed over the years, and in some ways remained the same. But some of his words were really powerful. And when I turned to Twitter that day, there's a lot of great images, a lot of wonderful quotes that were being uplifted. I know a couple that were mentioned were, "I have not struggled in vain." That's what Tommy said. And I think that is hugely important for him to be able to say, looking at the state of the United States now, and to see such a powerful group come together to really be wanting to address uprooting systemic inequities. Another quote that was also uplifted from him was, "Unlearning racism is a course in love thy neighbor." And that is essential for us to always remember as we do the work that we're trying to do in community, as we have diversity of thought, especially now in divisive times. We need to be able to have that be rooted into the core work that we focus on, especially around our anti-racism journey. And it was just powerful to have that guidance from our African American CEOs to really set the tone for that day for our Thursday sessions.
Yeah, and then we leaned into some fabulous workshops being offered that afternoon. So hopefully you had some opportunities to expand upon your learning experiences. And then of course we closed out that day with a Leading Change C-suite panel moderated by our very own Paris Smiley, a 15-year-old change maker, and who happens to be my daughter. So I will just share personally, it was just so awe-inspiring to be watching from the background, you know, one of my babies sitting up at the table, inviting our children, inviting our youth, our change makers to the table will be so critical to seeing the change we want to see in the world. And just watching her lean into that conversation, and then hearing the amazing responses from all of our C-suite leaders who are really willing to be transparent and vulnerable and authentic in how we as an organization and how we as individuals can truly transform our communities. And so I would say that for me was probably the highlight for my week experience. And I don't know if you could see me in the background, I was pacing behind, and it was just such an amazing experience to have, not only just to witness, but to hear as well. So hopefully it resonated with you all as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to give a little shout out to everyone who we saw throughout the week at our various networking opportunities. The trivia game on Monday night was fantastic. It was great to see people for the virtual paint party, as well as our social happy hour last night. And a big thank you to everybody who's shown up for our mentoring sessions, both mentees and mentors. You've been wonderful. And it's a lot of folks have shared the excitement of getting to create connections in a year where they may have not had as many opportunities. So we see all of you, and we thank you all for showing up.
Yes. And then this morning we kicked off with some yoga for those that were able to get up early. I heard it was in Japanese, so we're truly a global conference. May have been technical difficulties due to, but it was also a great opportunity. And then our opening session was with Dr. Brenda Salter McNeil. I felt so honored to be able to have that conversation with her. She really challenged us to consider from a Christian perspective why it's important that we need to show up as reconciliation leaders and be brave and use our voices to speak up. I think one of my favorite quotes from the planning committee that we took down is, "We all have the opportunity to be brave. Even the most unlikely person has been called to stand up and speak out against injustice." And Dr. Brenda really challenged us. She said to find the area where you feel called, that society has called each and every one of us to speak out. And so to listen and pay attention to where God, or if you don't believe in God, where society is calling you to use your voice and speak out and be brave. Because the way that people are going to know your truth is not just by what you say, but by the actions that come alongside of it. And that was just such a powerful way to kick off our morning.
Then, of course, we got to hear from the amazing Jessica Rojas, who shared a fabulous session on protecting your peace and what that really means. And I learned, the lesson for me was just a lesson in transparency and vulnerability, even for us as leaders and individuals. I recognize I don't do that myself. And so seeing her do that and share that with all of us was so meaningful for me. And I hope that it really resonated for each of you as well. It was an amazing session that really speaks to what is it that we need to do to really protect our own peace, and what are some tools and strategies that we could apply to our own lives, even when we find ourselves in the servant leadership roles to others. We need to make time and space for ourselves as well. So thank you, Jess, for sharing that session with us. It was an amazing session.
And then wrapping up, mere moments ago with Dr. Pierce, we were able to ask some questions or to ask ourselves some critical questions, thinking about what am I doing to connect my soul to my role, exploring that justice is a structural uprooting of systems that may be broken, and that we need to lead with purpose and lead on purpose. So there were so many core and key ideas that we need to really explore and challenge ourselves that Dr. Pierce was able to elevate for us and amplify. And saw in the chat that I definitely got a lot of thinking and momentum going. So I'm excited that was the closing for our virtual event this week, to really set the tone for asking some of these critical questions that we need to further explore ourselves in our why, and then within our greater community. So it was quite a wonderful way to wrap up the day. So those are just some of our thank yous and reflections of the week. As we pose in our scavenger hunt today, we would love for you to share some of those reflections on your social medias, on Link, wherever you would want to share it. And now we actually have an opportunity to highlight some of our winners of the scavenger hunt throughout the week. So we have 5 winners, 1 per day, that we are going to elevate, and they will reach out and we will send them a little scavenger hunt gift cube. So for Monday, our first scavenger hunt winner was Ben Major, and shared a wonderful throwback picture not throwback picture, but a wonderful elevation of all the Dig and Emily buttons and little tchotchkes that Ben has. So thank you for that. And then for Tuesday, we had a fantastic voting picture from Kate Whitby. So we are excited that you all went out and voted, and we're rocking out those celebratory pictures. Then on Wednesday, we had a great quote from Kahila Harrison, and really, say that again? Kalila, apologies. Talking about the quote that gives her life, that actions speak louder than any t-shirt, which was something that Robin said, and was a powerful statement that still resonates with me. We got a really wonderful throwback Thursday picture from Jamal Harris, rocking out at a previous conference, and it really helped to remember all of the conferences of past that have moved us forward into this one today. And then for Friday, earlier today, we got a lovely picture from Ebony Mitchell, who is elevating Jessica, one of her, one of the people that inspires her. As we talked about the way we decide, the way we decide who is telling the truth is by their actions, and having that really be elevated by our main stage speaker really showcased some of the great reflections of the conference this week. So thank you all, and for everybody else who participated, you all are wonderful, and I will be emailing the 5 of you to discuss your scavenger hunt winnings.
Ooh, prizes.
Woo-hoo.
Yes. Well, before we close, I think just on behalf of everyone, we'd like to say a huge thank you. You saw some of our thank you slides on behalf of the DIGMD team before, but we do want to take this moment to really say thank you to our entire planning committee that made the DIGMD week possible. And a huge thank you to our DIGMD team that really worked behind the scenes to make absolutely everything this week go off without a hitch. As you might know, we put this together, our team came together, in 5 weeks, less than that, and put together everything that happened this during this virtual experience. So we just want to say a huge thank you to absolutely each and every one of you for everything that you've given. From what we're hearing, we had the opportunity to really create spaces for people to connect with one another like we would in person. And it might be a slightly different feeling, but we're so grateful for each and every one of you and for everyone that attended. Shauna, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, can we stop sharing the screen so we can see faces?
Sure.
Yeah.
Invite people on.
Yeah, no, I just want to say it's been a powerful week, and we truly hope that you all found value in it. And as Jessica shared, we put this together in a matter of weeks because we recognized how important this week would be for all of us, and this need to have a space to really lean on and connect with each other. And so my heart is full and overflowing, and I'm so thankful and grateful to have had this time and space for you all. And I wanted to share and express my gratitude to you, all of the planning committee members, all of our YFUSA team members who helped put it together, and then to all of the attendees and participants who made time and space to be here with us throughout the week. And I know, Jess, we were just saying we're sharing our thanks for all of you and everyone who helped put us together, but please be mindful to say thank you to whoever allowed you the space to be here, to be able to attend any of the sessions throughout the week. Someone gave you the ability and the time and the access to be able to attend this virtual experience. And so take a moment to say thank you to them as well, because we are so thankful that you were here to share in this space with us. So thank you. Love you.
I'm allowing our planning committee members, I'm getting there to get all of y'all on here so they can come on and say hello and thank you. And you can see their wonderful faces.
Oh man, if we were in person right now, we'd all be on stage, like screaming and cheering and hugging each other. We love you guys.
Awesome. Great.
Well, I'm glad to see the entire team here. So I just want to say thank you to you guys. This was definitely a teamwork, and without your guys' leadership, it would definitely not be possible. So thank you so much for replying the million emails and text messages and getting us through, but we did it. So very, very proud of you guys for leading us, and thank you so much. On a few notes, everyone just wait for the follow-up email. There's gonna be coming on Monday with more resources, with a deeper dive on what happened this past week. And do not forget the bash, the virtual bash tonight. So, everyone's, are we ready for that?
We were born ready for the virtual bash.
Oh, because the music, what happened? It's about to drop.
See you tonight.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.